I'm Saima Asghar Riaz. I'm a Warwick alumna, and I've been working with the University of Warwick since 1998, and more recently for the last couple of years with Loughborough University, both top 10 universities in the UK. I have a company. You see two logos on the right of my screen. So StEPS and StEPSEdu, one in Pakistan, one in the UAE. And I support students with their applications to UK universities, focusing on these two sort of core partners that I work with. Today, I'm joined by Tom Parker from the University of Warwick and Will Burns from Loughborough, and both of them are going to be guiding us and talking to us about A-level and IB subject combinations. The reason we are doing this is because every year we see a lot of applicants who would like to apply to particular courses at UK universities, and for some reason or the other, they have subjects that perhaps don't match the requirements of the universities. And increasingly, I've been getting parents reaching out to me to ask at this stage when the students are in their GCSE or MYP as to what subjects they should be taking so that they maximize their chances. So I thought, who better to ask than the experts themselves, who are sort of sitting right at the universities. And so they're going to talk to us about, generally what the universities are looking for, specifically their universities, but also in the UK in general, so that you have as many options open as possible when the UCAS application time arrives. Just to give you an idea of what I do, my company works with students across the spectrum, irrespective of what curriculum they're studying in. We provide guidance counseling. We help them understand what they should be applying to, what kind of subjects, what kind of courses, what kind of universities, what's a good fit for them. And also the room and it blocked my screen. So we help you, I give consultations on helping select subjects, or, matching your eligibility, as well as I do a lot of coaching around personal statements, whether you're applying, hopefully if you're applying to my partner universities, but even if you're not. And of course, once the students have admission to either Warwick or Loughborough, then we will help you with your, selecting your accommodation, as well as any pre-departure or visa guidance that you need. We also work with alumni, and we help with again, for the alumni, we help them with the, coaching them around work placements, around improving their CVs and cover letters, etc. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Tom to start. What we're going to do in the session is that we're going to start with a brief introduction by Tom of the University of Warwick, and then I think we're starting with Will, right? Got that? Yeah. So we'll start.
Yeah, happy either way.
Yeah. So we'll start with Will. We'll talk about Loughborough, and then we'll go on to Tom, who will talk a bit about Warwick, and then Tom will continue with his guidance on subject combinations, and then Will take over for further guidance around subject combinations and more for creative courses that Tom's not going to be covering in his talk. At any point during the conversation, if you have any questions, please do use the chat function and pop your questions in. Tom, Will, and I, all three of us will be keeping an eye on the chat. And if there are questions that can be answered during the presentation, then they'll take them in. And otherwise, we will leave ample time at the end of both Tom's and Will's presentations for you to have a more interactive session. So we'll keep the presentation short so that we have enough time for a discussion. So over to you. Will you be sharing your screen, or would you like me to do it? You're
if I can do it if you give me host access.
Multiple screen sharing is open.
Okay, perfect. So hi everyone. Listen, thanks for joining today, and thanks to Saima and the team at StEPS for for inviting us in to do this. I think both Tom and I probably want to just give a very brief overview of both our universities, but then we're really excited to give some advice around admissions for both our universities and hopefully have a bit of a conversation with you all around general application guidance. We won't cover it all as part of this, so please do any questions you have, whether or not it's related to creative courses, business or veterinary sciences, pop them in the chat or ask us at the end, and hopefully we can work together and provide some good advice to everyone. But in terms of an introduction to Loughborough, difficult name to pronounce, but for all of you, it's Loughborough University. We are located in the town of Loughborough, which is a city in the county of Leicestershire, which is very, very close by to the cities of Nottingham and Leicester City. To give you an idea, I was on Loughborough campus about 2 hours ago, and I'm now sat at home in Nottingham, so that's how close we are there. It's a small town, but a very large campus university. So the way I explain this to students is it's similar to like your American college campus, which you may be more familiar with from like the films of any American universities. It does make it a very safe environment and a very communal environment as well, and collegiate. So everything that you would need on campus is here, from the extensive sports facilities to your lectures to shops to accommodation. Everything you have is in very close walking distance. We are, as Saima said, one of the elite universities in the UK, similar to Warwick. So we have consistently ranked in the top 10 in the UK league tables since 2017. And I think it was last week we were ranked 7th again in the UK by the Complete University Guide. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, the CUG. And the reason why Loughborough ranks so well in the UK is largely down to our employability statistics, but also our student satisfaction. So we do very regularly rank either first or second in the UK for student satisfaction at Loughborough. It's actually the reason why for the last not for the last 3 years, but we have won University of the Year 3 times in the last 10 years. And no other university in the UK can say that they've done that other than Loughborough. But aside from UK rankings, our subject-specific expertise lies in the area of sports, where we're #1 ranked in the world for sports-related courses, art and design, engineering programs, media and communications, all within the top 100. And then finally, our business and management school is ranked around 135th. So still very good subjects across all of those. If you've heard of Loughborough before, in all likelihood, it is as a result of our sports reputation, but does travel quite internationally. And as I say, there are a number of different aspects to why Loughborough at sports is the best in the world. There are 3, which I consider. It's academic, performance, and participation. So as I've said, #1 in the world for sports-related courses. That's the academic side of sports at Loughborough. Secondly, the performance side of Loughborough. So whether or not you are studying sports management or you're just an athlete at Loughborough, we have won the British University College Sports League for the last 41 years consecutively. To give you an idea, the league has only ran for 41 years, so Loughborough has always won it. And in the Tokyo Olympic Games 2020, which was held in 2021, Loughborough associated athletes won 20% of Team GB's medals, which is it's the highest performing university in the world, let alone in the UK, which is really impressive. But for me, the most important thing around sports is participation. So it's not necessarily that you're an athlete or an Olympian or play at a really high level of sports. It's that when you come to Loughborough, you will be active in whatever sport or whatever level you're in. And actually that transcends sports. So you don't have to be in sport to make use of this, but any kind of society or any extracurricular activity is the reason why people do so well at Loughborough. So think about your passions outside of what your academic program is. Just to touch upon those academic programs very quickly, we do have 8 schools which offer undergraduate programs. This is everything from business to sports to science to engineering to design and creative arts as well. The easiest thing to say is what we don't offer, and that's clinical health programs like medicine, veterinary sciences or dentistry. We also don't have a law school. But aside from that, Loughborough is quite a comprehensive university in the UK. In terms of unique features for the undergraduate offer, all of our undergraduate courses, as is common for a lot of UK universities now, have an industry placement year where you would go off the university campus for a year and work. In fact, our business undergraduate programs, that's compulsory. So all of our business students will have to do a year in industry as part of their course. And finally, international students are guaranteed up to 2 years of on-campus accommodation if they firmly accept a Loughborough offer. You might ask why we don't guarantee it for 3 or 4 years, and it's because most students do a placement year, so they don't need that accommodation guarantee for the 3rd year. But hopefully that was within 5 minutes and a brief introduction. I'll stop sharing and pass over to Tom.
Thank you, Will. That was great. Very whistle-stop tour of Loughborough.
Whistle-stop. Yeah.
Thank you. I just spotlight Tom so we can see him. Thank you, Tom.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. I'm just going to get rid of my picture because that's off-putting. I'll try and keep this brief. It might be slightly more than 5 minutes, but I'll try and keep it to 5 minutes. So yeah, similar to Loughborough, Warwick is a sort of top-ranking university in the UK. It's a member of the Russell Group, if you're familiar with the Russell Group. Sorry, my screen is not working. So yeah, in terms of the rankings, we're consistently in the top 10 of the 3 major rankings in the UK, and last year we were the Times University University of the Year. So that's in the UK. In terms of globally, we're consistently ranked in the top 100 of the 2 major world rankings as well, 64th in the world with QS. But in terms of that sort of international stature, it's not just about rankings, it's also about the student body. So in terms of the proportion of students coming from overseas at Warwick, we're actually the 27th most international university in the world. So out of a student population, total student population of about 29,000, well over around 40% of our students come from overseas, which is a really, really high proportion. I think in the UK, only Oxford and Cambridge and some of those big London universities have a higher proportion of international students. But they're not all coming from 1 or 2 countries. We have over 150 nationalities represented in the student body. And kind of continuing that kind of international theme, we also have a lot of partnerships around the world with other universities. So we have around 200 partnerships across the world, across Europe, Latin America, North America, Australia, South Africa, and all across Asia. So, depending on the subject that you're interested in, there will be study abroad options in some of these different places. In terms of what we offer, similar to Loughborough, it's probably easier to say what we don't offer. So we're not quite comprehensive, but we do offer most programs across 3 different faculties. In terms of what we don't offer, so we don't have a undergraduate route medicine program. We have a graduate entry medicine program instead. We don't offer architecture or any design type programs. But other than that, we offer most subjects across these 3 faculties. And also we have some cross-faculty studies and really interdisciplinarity, very difficult to say, is very much part of the ethos of the university. So regardless of which subject you're studying, there are always opportunities to take modules, optional modules across these different subjects. In terms of our entry requirements, being a top 10 university across all the rankings, as you can imagine, our requirements are quite stringent. They range at A level from A star, A down to A, B, B. You just need to be careful about some of those subject specifics, which is kind of the point of today's session. And for IB, we range from 39 down to 32. In terms of kind of fees, our fees range from around 24 up to about 30,000. But we do have some really excellent scholarship programs at Warwick. The main one amongst them is the Warwick Undergraduate Global Excellence Scholarship. We offer 250 awards each year. 20 of them are fully funded. 160 of them are half fee, 50%, and the rest are £2,000. So really across the UK sector, that is incredibly generous. And we have some other bursaries and scholarships, such as the Al-Bukhari Undergraduate Scholarship as well. So you can check if your nationality is eligible for that. Another thing that stands Warwick apart is its sort of links with industry. Really, since its inception in the 1960s, it's always had close connections with local enterprise, with industry, with companies large and small. And that's really borne out in some sort of employment statistics. So we're in the top 5 most targeted universities by the top 100 graduate employers in the UK, and we're in the top 10 for graduate prospects as well. So part of that is those connections that we've always had with industry, but also it's partly our fantastic careers service that offers things like psychometric testing, interview techniques, skills workshops, internships, obviously, and careers fairs for different sectors across the year, employer presentations, so lots of exposure to companies during your stay on campus. But for me, what makes Warwick what it is, a great university, is the fact that it's a campus university. And so this gives you a bit of an idea of what the campus looks like. It's just outside the city of Coventry. It's got lots of green space. It's a vibrant campus. It's a modern campus. And really what a campus university gives you, where all the facilities are in one place, it gives you a kind of sense of community, a sense of belonging, and a more distinct identity that Warwick graduates really talk about staying with them long after they've finished their studies at Warwick. As I mentioned, there's lots of green spaces. There's an inordinate amount of ducks and geese wandering around the place. We have woodland and lakes on campus. It's a very relaxing place. As I mentioned, we're only from the 1960s. We're going to be celebrating our 60th anniversary very shortly. But within that very short time frame, we've kind of become one of the major universities, leading universities in the UK. But being a young university, we don't have the kind of grandeur and grand buildings of Oxbridge or some of the civic universities. But what we do have are state-of-the-art facilities and brand spanking new buildings like this. I'm conscious I'm with the king of sports at Loughborough with us today. But I will just have a little shout out for our sports facilities, which are nonetheless state-of-the-art and fantastic. While we don't offer sports programs at Warwick, if you are into sports, we have 65 plus sports clubs and really amazing state-of-the-art sports facilities across the campus. We also have on campus Warwick Arts Centre, which is the largest multi-arts venue outside of London. And this houses cinemas, a theatre, concert hall. It attracts international bands and comedians and performers. It's a really fantastic cultural space to have in the heart of our campus, and you get discounted tickets to all of those kinds of performances. We have cafes and restaurants and bars, a post office, a bank, a hairdresser, a medical facility on campus. Students kind of describe the campus as a small town where everything belongs to the universities, and I think that's a nice way to think about it. I mentioned before about the 65 plus sports clubs. We have around 250 societies as well, for whatever your interests are. And obviously, being a campus university, it's all on your doorstep when you're living on campus. We also have fantastic support services in place as and when you need them, from a mental health and wellbeing team. You'll have a personal tutor throughout your degree. There are counselling services. There's a chaplaincy for all major faiths. And of course, you have the Warwick Student Union, which is independent of the university. It's run by students for students, and they have their own sets of support services in place as well. So it's a very, very supportive place to be when you're away from home for the first time. This gives you a bit of a perspective of where our accommodation is. We have 13 halls of residence on campus across a range of budgets and options. So whatever it is that your budget is, you'll be able to find something appropriate across campus. And you're never more than a kind of 10-15 minute walk from one part of campus to another. And this is just a brief example of some of the accommodation. And then finally, just to mention where we are in the country. So not too far from Loughborough, actually. We're in the middle of the country. We're in the West Midlands, whereas Loughborough is in the East Midlands, but we're both kind of centrally located. So we are about 10-minute bus ride outside the city of Coventry. From Coventry, Birmingham, which is the UK's second biggest city, is 20 minutes by train. Central London, Euston Station, is 1 hour by train. We have Birmingham International Airport, about a 15-20 minute taxi ride from campus. It has direct flights from Dubai. And also flights all over Europe and beyond. So we're really, really well located in the middle of the country. You're never too far from any part of the country. You can take advantage of the rail network to visit across the UK on your weekends. So I mentioned Coventry is, technically we're in Coventry, but really we're just outside. Coventry's the UK's current city of culture. So there was lots of stuff going on in the last year or so related to that. And it's quite a young, vibrant city. It's ranked the 3rd best student city in the UK. And part of that is to do with the fact that there are lots of students living there from Coventry University, from Warwick University, and the fact that it's a very affordable city to live in. Leamington Spa is a little further. It's about 25-minute bus ride, but again, really popular with undergraduates, has beautiful Regency and Georgian architecture, lots of boutique shops and cafes and restaurants, very, very lovely place to spend time. Warwick is where we take our name from, but not actually where we're located, but it's a very historic town by the river, has a nice castle, well worth a visit. Stratford-upon-Avon is the birthplace of Shakespeare. Again, very cultural place by the canal, very pretty, definitely worth a visit. That's nearby. And Birmingham, as I mentioned, 2nd biggest city in the UK. It's where I live. And there's lots going on there, as you can imagine, in a big city, and that's only 20 minutes away. Okay, I think I've probably just gone over 5 minutes, but that's brought me to the end of that. I don't know, Saima, if you want me to head straight into the other thing, or you want to take a break for anything?
If you could just, yeah, if you could start with the subject selection. Thank you, Tom.
Sure, no worries. Okay, so on to the kind of meat of today's session. So we're basically going to be talking about subject selection, or as I like to kind of put it, kind of future-proofing that subject selection to ensure that you're giving yourself the best opportunity to do the subjects that you want at university. So I'm going to talk briefly about top tips, and then going to talk about some common misconceptions that students have about subject selection, some common pitfalls to try to avoid, and then I'll open it up to questions. Some of these ideas and themes are kind of overlapping, so if I'm starting to repeat myself, forgive me, but really if I'm repeating myself, it's because it's kind of an important point to get across.
Can I just, quickly pipe in to say, if you've got questions, you please do pop them into the chat, as I said earlier. And perhaps, Tom, if you don't mind, we'll take we'll do a joint question answer session, because it might be that some questions would be answered by Will anyway.
Yeah, of course, that's what I had in mind.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of top tips, so really the main one is to have in mind what you want to study at university. So what degree do you want to study at university in a general sense at the very least? This will really help you, help inform you about what subjects that might be related that you can take at school that will kind of keep that avenue open at university. And just as importantly as that, or you know, as well as the subject itself, think about the kinds of universities that you might want to study at. So if you are kind of confident in your academic ability and you have a sense of the kinds of grades that you might achieve in 2 years' time, that will then also help inform you as to which universities you might be eligible to apply for in terms of the kinds of entry requirements they might have. And then you can start doing the second tip, which is to do research ahead of time. So kind of now, really, over this summer, I know you're kind of, some of you are making choices now, but you still have the option to change them into next semester, I believe. So do your research. So think about, what do you want to study at university? Think about the kinds of universities that you might have the ability to get into, and really scour the websites of those universities and of UCAS to see which universities offer the subjects you're interested in, and start thinking about, you know, are there subject specific requirements that different universities have? What are they? Are there specific subjects that you need to be taking at A level or for HL? So for example, something like, you know, if you're interested in studying engineering, oftentimes you need to be studying physics and maths at A level or for HL. So also knowing the universities that you might be interested in, there might be differences between the universities. They might have the same grade requirements or the same IB score requirements, but their HL and subject requirements might differ. So doing your research ahead of time will give you much more of an idea and focus in terms of picking your subjects at school. Also, play to your strengths. So Are there subjects that you are just naturally gifted at, naturally talented at, and that with, you know, less effort you can do better at? You know, are there some where you can, you know, quite more easily achieve high grades, in which case absolutely take those, play to your strengths. Anything that's going to give you a slightly easier path to higher grades is definitely a good thing. But at the same time, don't forget your heart, listen to your heart. So obviously, if you are good at the things that you enjoy, you are in a beautiful place. But it might be that, you know, there are subjects that you know you're passionate about, that are perhaps not the things that you're the best at. But, you know, listen to your heart as well as playing to your strengths. Being passionate about something will help sustain your enthusiasm and your motivation when times get tough over the next couple of years. So it's definitely worth keeping in mind. If I think back to my own days, I actually, when I was your age, I was really into kind of sciencey type subjects, things like astronomy and geology, but I just do not have a scientific brain. So I had to kind of leave those things behind and play to my strengths. So, you know, only you will know, but keep both those things in mind. In terms of common misconceptions, so the first is, you know, the more subjects I take, the better my chance of admission. So this is a definite no-no. Okay, so I know in Pakistan in particular, schools are very keen for their students to take 4 or 5 A-level subjects. If you can convince them, if you can convince your counsellors and your school that that's not the case, then please do, because from an admissions point of view, this is absolutely not the case. Most, if not all, entry requirements at university are based on 3 A-levels. So obviously, it's much better for you to achieve higher in 3 than to risk spreading yourself too thinly and perhaps dropping a grade across 4 or 5. So this is a really important thing to keep in mind. I would definitely encourage you to take 3 A-levels and do as well as you can in those 3, rather than spreading yourself too thinly. Also, I need to have studied my desired degree subject at school. So this is sometimes the case, but it's not always the case. So again, this comes back to doing your research. So for STEM subjects, usually if you want to do a STEM subject, science, technology, engineering, medicine type program at university, you do need to do some STEM subjects at school. But for kind of arts, humanities, social science type subjects, this is often not the case. There are plenty of examples at different universities where this is not the case. Obviously, I encourage you to do your homework, look at the universities you're interested in, check the subject-specific requirements at those different universities. But just to give you a few examples, at Warwick, for example, so management does not require you to have studied business studies. Accounting and finance does not require you to have studied accounting and finance. Likewise, psychology, politics, sociology, theatre, philosophy, media, global sustainable development. Oftentimes it's because those subjects are not available as an A-level, but even so, you don't necessarily need to have studied that subject. So just do your homework and check different university websites for that kind of information. Also worth mentioning, actually, before I move on, some subjects, some degree programs, the entry requirements, they might not need you to have studied that particular subject, but they may still have subject requirements. So to give a couple of examples at Warwick, so for example, computer science does not require you to study computer science A-level or HL, but you do need maths. Likewise, economics, you don't need to have studied it, but you do need maths. And accounting and finance, you don't need to have studied it, but you do need maths. And also, one more thing to mention, again, do your homework across different universities because it will differ across different universities. But at Warwick also, for certain subjects, by doing extra subjects related, you might be able to reduce the overall entry requirement. So for example, in our life sciences school, things like biosciences, biotech, biomedical sciences, they have, if you're only doing biology A-level or biology HL, they will have an AAB or a 34 requirement. Whereas if you're doing an additional subject, STEM subject like chemistry or physics, then the overall entry requirement is reduced to ABB or 32. So again, you can make your life easier if you keep those things in mind. So check the universities you're thinking about for those kinds of options. Okay. And in terms of STEM subjects at school, obviously, if you're doing STEM subjects at school, it clearly does lend itself to doing a STEM degree, but it doesn't limit you to that. So if you're doing, maths, physics, chemistry, something like this, and ultimately you decide you want to do a law degree or economics or something like this is perfectly fine. You're keeping your options open, because those social science subjects don't tend to have subject-specific requirements, but do always check. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. And then finally, just to move on to pitfalls. So I've kind of touched upon this in other ways in the last 5 minutes, but inappropriate HL or A-level subjects. Every year, it's really sad to see people who are passionate to come to Warwick, who have been ill-advised by their school, or their school just doesn't offer a particular HL and they are unable to come. So do check. This comes back really to doing your homework, doing your research, and knowing where you want to study and what you want to study. So don't unwittingly preclude future degree programs or universities by not taking a particular subject or by taking inappropriate subjects. I would say this is more the case, more important with STEM subjects, but also things like economics or computer science, accounting and finance, you'll need to be doing maths. So keep that in mind. Also worth noting are overlapping subjects. So again, do your homework across different universities you might be interested in. But just to give an example, at Warwick, if you are looking to study in the business school, we consider business studies and accounting and finance A-levels to be overlapping subjects. So if you were doing those two subjects, you would need to be doing 4 A-levels in total, because we consider those two subjects as one A-level. So just something to keep in mind, because if you don't keep that in mind, then that could be a nasty surprise when you actually come to apply to the universities that you're interested in. And then finally, assuming similarly ranked universities have the exact same requirements. So this is not necessarily the case. So it may be that universities with a similar kind of ranking or prestige, similar rankings, similarly ranked universities or a similar level of university, they may have the same overall requirements, so the same A-level grade requirements or the same IB score requirements, but within that, the subject specifics might change or might be different. So for example, at Warwick, Warwick no longer requires for its engineering programs to be doing HL maths and physics. It's only one or the other. Whereas lots of universities still have the HL in both requirement. So just something to keep in mind across your different universities that you're thinking about. And similarly, outside of the actual subjects themselves, there might be additional requirements that some universities have that others don't. So off the top of my head, I'm thinking of things like law. So some universities, they might have a 3A requirement at different universities, or 36 or 38 in the IB or whatever it might be, across different universities. But within those same universities, some of them might require the LNAT or some of them might not. So again, just keep those additional qualifications in mind across the different universities that you're thinking about. And then finally, I promise this is my last one, more is better. I kind of alluded to this earlier, but studying extra A-levels is not necessarily the best thing for you. If you are incredibly bright and you're very, focused and you want to just prove yourself, then fine, do 4, do 5. I once met somebody who did 27 A-levels. They would have got into their university with 3. So, more is not necessarily better. And actually having 3 and overachieving past the entry requirement for the universities you're thinking about is actually far better than potentially only meeting the entry requirement or just narrowly missing the entry requirement with more A-levels, especially at very selective universities like Warwick. Okay, and with that, I'll just mention a few resources for after today. So I offer online counselling sessions throughout the year, so you can just sign up to that anytime and I can have a chat with you online. We have a live chat. We have a digital resources page for schools, which is really useful. If you have a short attention span or you prefer watching things to reading things, I definitely recommend the YouTube channel. Or for any university you're interested in, I would definitely recommend their YouTube channel. And if you want to get a student perspective, we have student blogs that you can read and you can interact with those bloggers as well. And that is my email if you want to get in touch. And with that, I will stop sharing and hand over to Will.
Thank you, Tom. That was very helpful. And I see a lot of questions. Thank you, Will, for taking the questions in the chat. And if I could request Tom to do the same now when Will presents. So if there are any questions in the chat, if you could take them, otherwise I'm also happy to take them. So over to you, Will.
Yeah, thank you. Let me just try and share my screen. Is this better? Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. So listen, I'm very conscious that a lot of you won't be interested necessarily in a creative course, so it might seem a bit strange, but I'm doing my, this will only take a few minutes, so my few minutes on creative courses, but there's a good reason for doing this. Now, that reason is creative courses in the UK often have some of the most complicated entry requirements with additional criteria. But a lot of what I'm going to say here is in keeping with what Tom has just spoken to about. You know, the few points are, even though similarly ranked institutions might have the same program, it's not necessary to say they'll have the same entry requirements. So do check on what the university specific entry requirements are. And, you know, having what it is that you want to study in your degree, you do not necessarily have to do as a subject in your A-levels or in your high school, if it might be your AB. And then finally is the subjects which you study in high school. Let's say, for example, they're STEM subjects, they're not limiting. And the creative courses, a few examples which I give here, will hopefully demonstrate this from Loughborough's perspective. Okay, so from creative courses, typically what you would be asked to provide are subject requirements.
Will, I think you need to move your slide. You're on the unique features slide.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is stop sharing for a second.
Yeah, sorry.
This is this sometimes a problem I have on Zoom is I can't share my PowerPoint.
You want me to share it? Do you want me to share it for you?
Yeah, sure. Why don't you share?
Yes. Okay, just give me a minute.
There's not an awful lot of slides, so it shouldn't be too big a problem.
If I can, why is it not allowing me to share? Yeah. Sorry, why can I not see my sharing option? There I can. Right. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. I just take you to the right.
Click all the way through. There you go. So if you want to start with, you go back a bit. Yeah. Okay.
There.
You've gone too far.
There you go.
Next one. Next. Yeah. So sorry about that, guys. You would think after 3 years of using Zoom, I'd have learned how to do it now, but unfortunately not. So here we go. As I say, creative courses typically have your typical subject specific requirements. And if you click Saima, there will also normally be a creative portfolio and an interview required as well. Now, the reason why I chose creative courses as the example here is if we choose 3 of the creative subjects which we have at Loughborough, you'll see that from a subject specific requirement perspective, they differ quite a lot. So graphic design, for example, no subject specific requirement for graphic design. A lot of students often think that they would need to do an art and design program to study graphic design. Well, that's not the case at Loughborough. It may be elsewhere. Architecture, that's an interesting one because, again, there is no subject specific requirement. However, we do advise students have a mixture of a science, an art and a humanities subject to study architecture. And actually in the questions, I've noticed someone asked about law and psychology. Again, for psychology, we don't have any subject specific requirements, but what our admissions office would look at is a student who is familiar with a science program, but also humanities program as well. Psychology is a bit of a unique mixture of the 2 of those. And then finally, product design and technology. again, we're not asking for an art and design subject for this creative course, but instead we are asking for a STEM subject in order to get on there. So I guess the point what I'm trying to say here is for creative courses or courses more generally, your idea of what the course requirements are is not necessarily reality. So do have a look at what is required for you to get onto certain programs. Now, moving on to the portfolio, as you see here, all of these programs do require a portfolio. So although I've told you here that you don't need to study art and design to do either graphic design or architecture necessarily, you do need to have a pretty good creative background for you to have a portfolio. Now, the portfolio is only going to be required for creative courses, but the message here is simple. You know, whether or not you're going into psychology or law or whatever it may be, and you haven't studied that subject, you will all be asked to complete a personal statement. Now, it may be the case that you haven't studied in that subject area, but you will almost certainly need to have a good understanding of what that subject area will be. Whether or not it's creative courses or economics or veterinary sciences, you may not have studied something similar in your school, but you do need to have done wider reading, at least for your personal statement, and have a good idea of what the course is. For portfolio, it's much more prescriptive than what a personal statement would be. And it does ensure that even if you haven't studied that subject at high school, you do have the skills required to complete and an interest in the course area to complete a degree program. Click on Saima if you don't mind. Now, this is much more specific to any of you who might be interested in a creative course, but the creative portfolio is there as an opportunity to show your thinking through making and evidence the skills required to visualize ideas in the material world, whether or not that's fashion design or architecture or graphic design. And there's just a few tips for submitting a portfolio. Just click twice to the first and second one, Saima. Thank you. So these two tips, again, reiterating really the message which Tom and I have said repeatedly. What is the format and size of restrictions of the portfolio, and what is a portfolio asking you to do? Now, important here that even at Loughborough, our creative courses have different requirements for a portfolio, and they're asking for different things. So the message is, again, look to see what the admissions requirements are, look to see what the portfolio requirements are. Even if you are applying to the same course at different universities, they may have different requirements. What a portfolio would normally be looking for is a full process of your design thinking, from idea to the process and to the outcome. Now, you can include designs from your sketchbook, but we're not asking you to translate directly from your sketchbook, because normally they won't really show the narrative and your full design process. And also for the portfolio, and again, similar to your personal statement, we're asking you to show off here. So what is your proudest moment? What is your proudest project? And what are you're most happy about? That is what should be front and center for your personal statement, as it should be for your design portfolio as well. And for the portfolio, we're asking you to demonstrate a wide range of ideas and skills. So, you know, you may be a very good painter or a very good drawer, but we are expecting you to showcase more than just one medium of design in a portfolio. And finally, Saima, if you click on organize and annotate your portfolio. So your portfolio should be should flow and should have a story and a narrative as part of a portfolio, again, from the idea to the outcome and showing the process in between. And we do expect students to annotate a design portfolio as they are submitting it. And finally, as Tom did, there are a few links here for any of you who might be interested in the creative course. There's a lot of guidance for Loughborough, but also a lot more of more general guidance available on the website. That's everything from me, Saima.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Tom. I have a lot of questions in the chat. And I know that Tom and Will have both been answering them as well. This is the opportunity now for you to, if you have any other questions, please feel free to unmute your mics and we'd be happy to take them.